Now, I've spoken about this previously, but based on the comments on my last video, what we're talking about today has very much gone under the radar for most people. While the entire country argues about whether or not 15-year-olds should be allowed on TikTok, the e-Safety Commissioner quietly switched on the most comprehensive age verification system on Earth. They quietly registered the e-Safety industry codes, which require no debate before Parliament, but are very much going to impact the way that you and I interact with the internet. And this isn't just about the under 16s, it's for the rest of us. And if you're just sitting there thinking, I'm just going to use a VPN, mate, doesn't worry me. These new codes literally require platforms to detect and block VPNs. That's right, people. Welcome to Australia's new internet passport system, brought to you by the people who think that adults need a permission slip for legal content. Starting this month for search engines and as early as 2026 for everything else, every adult Australian now has to scan their face or upload ID to access certain content that the e-Safety Office has deemed is adults only. Now, as I've said in the past, I have less of an issue with having to prove you're an adult to be able to access a copy of, say, How to Train Your Gag Reflex or some other shit like that. My issue is about the way that they are going about it. The requirement itself is authoritarian and would be unnecessary if parents actually parented. But also, there are other ways to prove that you are over the age of 18 other than having to hand over your government-issued ID to a growing honeypot of potential identity theft, or by having your face scanned by an AI in order to access a perfectly legal website. But now you are being forced to trade your privacy for safety, and your biometric data will live with a third-party company forever. And under the codes, platforms are legally required to detect and defeat VPNs. But almost nobody in the media is talking about it. This is the real digital ID creep, and it became law without a single proper national debate. If you're new here, feel free to hit the like and subscribe buttons for more legal and political breakdowns and rants. Consider joining me for a live stream on the Aussie Overlaw'd live channel, or find me on X, Patreon, or in the Underlord Discord. As always, don't take my word for it and do your own research. Links to everything will be in the description, but stick around and we'll unpack the industry codes that Julian and Grant slid in the back door while no one was looking, and how it's going to impact on you. In mid-2025, the e-Safety Commissioner finalised the registration of the 9 Phase 2 industry codes under the Online Safety Act of 2021, completing a regulatory framework that now comprehensively governs access to Class 1C and Class 2 restricted material across virtually the entire Australian internet stack. For those of you wondering, that's the collection of protocols and computer whiz-bangery that allow our computers to talk to each other here in Australia. Now, let me be clear, we're going to talk about Class 1C and Class 2, but much like the under 16 social media ban, the only way to prevent access to these classes is to potentially catch other classes of material. Class 1C material includes content that would be classed as R18 plus or X18 under the National Classification Scheme if it were physical media. Now, I'm not going to lie, the porn angle is being pushed pretty hard here. I'm pretty sure that's being done to make this whole thing more palatable to the masses and easier to attack detractors. I mean, it takes a certain kind of creep to be sitting there saying, you know what, let's allow young people to see pornographic images. For those of you that don't remember, this is Welcome to Sex, a book I talked about a little while ago, the book that was allegedly aimed at 10 to 15-year-olds, but that the author would be happy having been read by an 8-year-old, contains graphic depictions of genitalia and sex acts, including scissoring and other intimate actions, and it was named by the Australian book industry as Book of the Year for older children. It was also nominated by the Prime Minister for his literary awards in 2024. I can't show any other images out of this book because it would break YouTube's terms of services. In my own personal opinion, that's all pretty disgusting, and as far as I'm concerned, it's evidence to show that this ban is not about protecting children from adult material, it's about deciding which adult material the government exposes our children to. But let's keep in mind what the R18 actually covers. It's not just porn, it also covers certain levels of violence and drug use and a few other things, some of which the government just doesn't want everyday Aussies to see. It also covers certain media genres like horror, for example. Also keep in mind that video games like GTA 3, Days, We Happy Few, Left 4 Dead 2, South Park, Fallout 3, Saints Row 4, and The Witcher 2 were all banned, receiving a R18 rating at some point under this classification system. Class 2, on the other hand, encompasses high-impact violence, instructional material on drug use, self-harm, eating disorders, or pro-terror-related content that would be completely refused classification. Now again, I would argue that there are certain content that would fall into this category that any adult should have access to, whether it offends someone's delicate sensibilities or not. For example, it was this category that the e-Safety Commissioner tried to use to censor the entire internet and have both the Christchurch mosque shooting in March of 2019 and the Wakeley church stabbing in 2024 scrubbed from the internet entirely. Now, I can understand that people people may not want to see those items popping up on their X feed randomly. I sure as hell wouldn't either. They were both horrific events. But for the sake of accurately recording historical events or truthful journalism, I am personally of the belief that the government does not have the right to treat grown adults as children and decide what they do and don't see. I'm not asking you to agree with that, that's just my opinion on the matter. My preference would be to see something implemented at an app or site level in the settings. Oh wait, it's already there, at least on X anyway. The codes were rolled out in 2 tranches. 3 covering internet hosting services, internet carriage services, and search engine services, which were registered on 27 June 2025, which I'm personally of the belief there's a little bit of chicanery going on there. It's a little bit deceptive given that it has a 6-month date, meaning that all of this comes into effect 2 days after Christmas when nobody's paying attention. The remaining 6 being social media core features, social media messaging, relevant electronic services, designated internet services, app distribution services, and equipment were all registered on 9 September 2025 and come into effect on 9 March of 2026, with full age assurance obligations delayed a further 6 months for certain classes to allow them for implementation. But yep, you heard that right, people. No more anonymous chatting to friends about how bad the government is, people. The eSafety Commissioner justifies this by saying that their core design creates a high-risk pathway for children to access or be exposed to Class 1C or 2 material. They point to peer-to-peer file sharing, private group chats, and end-to-end encryption as features that allow explicit or violent content to be sent directly to minors. Fucking bite me. They say that it's either done deliberately via grooming, bullying, sextortion, or accidentally through forwarded memes, links, or files. In short, while public platforms can filter feeds algorithmically, messaging services are essentially private postal systems for images and videos, and they don't like that. So under the guise of protecting kids, there's going to be additional steps. It's been set up in a way that they can say that it's risk-based and outcome-focused, not a blanket verify or you're locked out rule. The code explicitly says basic communication functionality does not require verification if the risk is low. But they're leaving it to the platforms to determine if content sent on the platform should be locked. The app must have systems in place to prevent kids from accessing adult material. This could mean age-gating file sharing, blurring attachments for unverified users, or verifying the age only for servers, channels, or groups known to contain adult content. This, however, can only happen if the platform is actively monitoring files and attachments, which I'm sure someone in the comments is going to rightly point out they probably already do. But if the platform's required to then ask you to verify your age and then report that even annually to the Australian government, that's an invasion of privacy in my book. Again, I have no qualms about keeping such material out of the hands of kids, but isn't it superb the way authoritarians always try and package tyranny up as child protection? 1 minute you're laughing at the latest meme, the next you're uploading a selfie to some algorithm that already thinks that every East Asian face is underage. Also, Julian and Grant can sleep better at night knowing the nation's online habits are safely locked behind a government-approved age gate. And this isn't hyperbole. 8 of the 9 Phase 2 industry codes, now either in force or about to be, explicitly require age assurance before Australians can access Class 1C or Class 2 material. The sole exception is the Internet Carriage Service Code applying to ISPs, where the Commissioner has explicitly acknowledged the technical impracticability, because even the Commissioner realises that trying to filter at the pipe level is like trying to stop the tide with a teaspoon. Every other layer, social media, apps, search, hosting, messaging, app stores, even the bloody equipment manufacturers have to build a wall. And the wall is high. Appendix F of the December 25 regulatory guidance reads like a Stasi wish list. The age assurance provider must be accurate, robust against circumvention, fair, privacy preserving. Yes, they actually wrote that with a straight face, and secure. I also X'd out on that one. And so what are the acceptable methods? Facial age estimation, the same tech that routinely misages people of color, a driver's license or passport scan, credit card check, or some shiny new digital token that definitely, absolutely won't ever be the foundation of a national digital ID, promise, or an attestation by a parent. But if you're going to attest by a parent, that means that the parent then has to provide all of their details and their ID. Self-declaration or tick box terms are explicitly ruled insufficient. So a tick box stating I'm over the age of 18 is officially laughed out of the room. Specifically for search engines, under the Internet Search Engine Services Code, providers like Google and Microsoft, although who the hell still uses Bing, must implement age assurance for logged in Australian users, enabling the highest safe search settings by default for those deemed likely to be children under 18. Preventing sexually explicit or violent autocomplete predictions, blurring detected pornography and high-impact violence in images results for all users regardless of login status, and displaying crisis prevention information for searches related to eating disorders, self-harm, or self-yeeting. This extends to integrated AI-generated results and advertising, which cannot be served to child accounts in restricted categories. Non-logged-in users face a default blurring but no mandatory age checks, as the code recognizes the general public nature of search tools. Generative AI tools capable of outputting restricted material face pre-deployment age gating reporting obligations. So if you're trying to use Grok Imagine to show a pair of titties, you're going to have to verify your ID beforehand. Search engines must also invest in safety teams, report annually to the e-safety commissioner, and engage with community organizations. Non-compliance triggers a familiar escalation ladder: monitoring, formal reports, remedial directions, civil penalties, with specific breaches potentially fined up to $49.5 million. Honestly, I would say at this point it's easier for the companies to pull out of Australia altogether. Just pull the plug on their end and blame the Australian government and move on. This regime of industry codes is separate from the under 16 ban, effective December 2025, but it shares the same philosophical DNA. Adults are to be treated as wards of the state when it comes to legal content. The practical reality for ordinary Australians is plain to see. Within weeks for search engines and months for broader services, any engagement with content that the government deems should be restricted, including pornography, violent video game content, or even niche forums discussing restricted topics, will require submission to a gatekeeper holding biometric or identity data. And if you think it's going to stop there, I have a bridge to sell you. For search alone, everyday questions could trigger blurred results or forced safe search modes, disrupting seamless experiences across devices and ecosystems. Google, which handles over 90% of Australian searches, has already indicated plans to use AI for age estimation, while Microsoft explores similar methods for privacy considerations. VPN usage will inevitably surge, only to encounter mandated circumvention detection, while smaller overseas sites are more likely to just geo-block Australian IPs entirely rather than comply. Search results will be pre-sanitized for everyone, not just children, turning the open web into a kindergarten sandbox. The creation of a vast database of verified adult preferences held by third-party verifiers like Yoti or local equivalents, and honestly, don't get me started on the supposed conflict of interest in relation to certain providers there, represents an unprecedented privacy risk in Australian history, with experts like RMIT's Lisa M. Given questioning whether compliance will meet expectations for seamless private online access. I mean, she was actually quoted as saying, "I've never seen anything like this in the world." And it's annoying that Albo's out there preening about how this is a world first. I mean, this is the man that specifically said that if he was a dictator, he would ban social media. Presumably so that we're all stuck sucking on the government-funded teat of mainstream media.
You are a dictator for 5 years. What do you do? What's your first act?
The big frustrating thing, if I could do something, maybe ban social media, would be handy. Because
What worries you about social media?
Look, I think a couple of things. One is keyboard warriors who can anonymously say anything at all.
Albanese fantasizing about using dictatorial powers to ban all social media isn't a joke. It's the most honest he's ever been about how much he fears the Australian people speaking without his permission or without scrutiny. You've got industry experts and privacy advocates highlighting potential disruptions from repeated checks, the inaccuracy in the tools, especially for diverse demographics, and risks of data breaches or misuse. But e-safety commissar, Commissioner Julie Inman-Grant, has emphasised a layered safety approach targeting choke points, including concerns over children engaging in harmful AI chat interactions. Yet critics argue that this is just overreaching into adult freedoms without sufficient evidence of efficacy. So what's the result? A weary Aussie after a long day fires up their laptop, clicks a link and is greeted not by the content that he or she came for, but by a demand to prove their age to a corporation that now holds their biometric template in perpetuity. Or they scan their license so a foreign verifier knows exactly which category of debauchery they prefer, if that's what they were doing. I mean, geez, imagine the targeted ads after that. And we're meant to trust that this data will never be hacked, never be subpoenaed, never be quietly retained for safety improvements. I mean, pull the other one. We've already seen this movie. In America, Louisiana and Texas implemented similar laws. Traffic from those states to major adult sites collapsed overnight as companies simply blocked the entire region rather than comply. Australia's version is broader and more draconian, covering not just dedicated websites, but any platform that might host restricted material. Post a spicy image on Reddit? Better hope Reddit's age gate works, or the Australian users will get blocked. The open internet, already wounded, just took another bullet. The irony of all this is almost poetic. The same public servants who can't deliver a functioning broadband network for Australia are now mandating world-leading age verification technology because nothing says mature liberal democracy like treating consenting adults like toddlers who need a permission slip for legal activity. And like I said, I'm genuinely all for keeping real children away from real pornography and real harmful content. Any civilized person is. But the adults who designed this system have confused the cure with the disease. The cure is parental control, proper device settings, opt-in strict modes, education, and personal responsibility, something that many Australians seem to be happy to divest themselves of and just leave everything to the government. Are you freaking kidding me? Take responsibility for your own actions. The disease, however, is the creation of a massive honeypot of biometric preferences from here to Beijing, Moscow, or Timbuktu to salivate over, while simultaneously shrinking the legal adult internet and pushing users towards darker, unregulated corners that don't ask questions. This is not child protection, this is control dressed in the sheep's clothing of compassion. And the most chilling part is that this happened almost silently. I mean, the number of people that have commented on my social media ban videos saying, well, they're not doing anything about porn, so why is this? It's because they did it in the dark of night without making a big hoopla about it. It's coming, you just don't know about it. The under 16 ban consumed every ounce of media oxygen for 18 months. Trials, outrage, parliamentary speeches, the works. The adult age verification regime, the far more invasive part, got a handful of tech blog paragraphs and a couple of news pieces before everyone moved on. The media barely blinked. Major outlets like ABC, SBS, and The Guardian ran pieces between July and September noting the impending changes, often buried in text sections or framed neutrally as child safety wins, while television current affairs almost ignored the adult privacy implications entirely. Specialist legal and tech publications like ACS Information Age and Baker McKenzie Insights, plus a handful of opinion writers, sounded alarms about ramifications like geo-blocking and VPN crackdowns. But the broader public discourse remained fixated on the TikTok trials and teenage mental health, leaving most Australians unaware that their most private online habits are now permanently mediated by government-mandated gatekeepers. That should terrify you more than any facial scan ever could. And if you think this stops at porn, you haven't been paying attention. Today, it's adult content. Tomorrow, it's gambling, alcohol advertising, political opinions that the government finds harmful. The architecture is now in place. This is right out of their playbook. We've already seen it with how they're treating tobacco. They can't outright ban it without losing in the polls, so they are underhandedly taxing it through the nose to force people away from something that is perfectly illegal. As a result, we've literally got underground tobacco wars going on, with smoke shops being firebombed. For fuck's sake, either have the balls to ban it outright or face the consequences and move on. Adults have autonomy. We can make decisions for ourselves without the nanny state dictating what we can and can't do. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. Comment below if you're reaching out for a VPN yet, or if you're just going to hand over your face like a good little citizen. I know which side of history I'm going to be on. In the meantime, stay healthy, wealthy, and wise, people, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, peeps.